Hi, thank you, John. Um, so again, I'd like to also extend a welcome to everyone who has joined today, and I'm really hopeful that we will paint a really good landscape for you on how we at Microsoft view threat protection and how we believe in telemetry and coordination of events, and we really challenge each one of you to walk away with, first, don't walk away with questions. If you have questions, please, chime in on the live event, type your questions in. We'll do our best to answer. But also, we want to issue a challenge to follow up with us. This is going to be an overview. It's intended to give you insight into how to better protect your entities and protect what's going on in your environment and to mitigate risk. But we challenge you to follow up and allow us to really go in deep depth with some of these subjects and really help you as our customer be successful along your mission. And so please chime in and we shall continue. John, am I okay to proceed? Everything's visible and audio is okay?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. So I wanted to for you as we march through the threat protection and how to mitigate risk. And I know most of you, I've talked to a lot of my tribal customers and Alaska Native customers. I know a lot of you have uh, experienced a lot of this, right? Cyber is the new battlefield. It's moving away from a lot of the physical and some other attacks, but cyber is really the new battlefield. Um, as we all know, even here in Microsoft, security skills and resources, finding those persons who can help us. And I hear a lot of that from our tribal community. Is in short supply, right? And so how do we handle that, right? And then finally, virtually anything that's connected can be hacked and attacked. And so you think IoT, you think anything in your organization that has a heartbeat that's connected, it's vulnerable. So this next slide, I think, I'm sorry, is really the key, and it's not a whole lot going on here, but the digital estate is growing, right? And this speaks more to, again, to what we've talked about with everything, the digital, everything is growing, everything is being connected. We've generated, I believe, more data in the last 5 years than we had the prior 100 years, right? And so it's only getting, as we get more connected, we become more modern in our workplace. We're expanding our risk landscape, and this is part of the problem that we deal with. And so this is the challenges, right? In your environments, we know that bad actors are getting more and more creative. They're investing more. Attacks are forever changing, and they're doing a better job at being more sophisticated in attacks. We know that we have a lot to secure in our organizations, right? Think of data. Think of, in this new era of the pandemic, things, you're working from home, and you're now having employees that may use personal, or even if it's a corp issued device, they're maybe doing some other things on a device. Your data, your resources your landscape is ever growing. And then finally, this is the piece that really we'll hit on today, is that's integrated intelligent correlation, right? How do you do that? How do you orchestrate all of that signature, all of that telemetry, and not make it expensive and time consuming, right? That is the challenge. That is the main, those are the main three challenges of securing your environment today. So we at Microsoft, right, we believe in statistics, and if you want to read some of the rating guidelines out there from Gartner to Forrester, et cetera, we're showing the proof in it that telemetry matters, signal matters, right? And what you're seeing here is that everything that I'm going to show you today by way of threat protection, right? It feeds, and the foundation lays on top of what you see here, right? We have 400 billion emails analyzed, right, through Outlook and other means that we have. Look at that 1.2 billion device scanned each month. We see a lot, right? 200 plus global customer and commercial services, right? 5 billion threats detected on devices every month. And that's coming, being fed partly from our Windows platform. And so if you think about all of this telemetry and the lessons learned, we plug that into what we call our Microsoft Intelligence Security Graph. And all of our security endpoints feed off of that to have that visibility across the platforms. And I'll use a term, and I'll refer back to it shortly here. I call it putting our security in a pond, right? If you have lakes and tributaries and rivers, and a rock falls in either of those, you really can't feel it across a different lake or river. But if you put it in a pond, right? If you throw that rock in that pond, that ripple will be felt across the pond. You'll see what happens if Brian has a mobile device and Brian is not behaving in an appropriate manner, or he's doing something that we've known that's a bad activity, that's negative activity. It should be realized when Brian then switches to his corporate device, or when Brian then goes to some high business impact application. That's that coordination, that's that visibility, and that's what we'll show you today. So we look at threat protection, and I like this slide because it's really not Microsoft centric. If you're not using Microsoft, you still have to address these categories, these 5 categories. How are you mitigating, reducing the landscape and taking care of risk from an identity perspective, from your normal users to your elevated users? How are you handling endpoints from a device perspective and sensors? How are you dealing with user data, cloud apps, right? SaaS application realm, and the data that even goes back and forth between those cloud apps. And then finally, how are you handling and mitigating risk and threats in your infrastructure realm, from VMs to databases to networks to IaaS, PaaS, you name it? What are you doing there, right? And it can't be siloed in today's world. What happens in identities should affect how you treat that user when they're dealing with cloud apps. What happens with user data violations should carry back over to an authentication and maybe require MFA. What happens on an endpoint should definitely affect how you allow that access to a cloud application, right? That's our view. That's how we compartmentalize our Microsoft threat protection. And if you notice at the bottom there, everything is built on that telemetry and those signals that I talked about before, 6.5 trillion signals a day. We feed off of that. We feed it into those 5 areas, and all 5 areas are connected. So within Microsoft, we have a synchronized approach to address each of the 5 areas, right? And these are some of the solutions, most of them cloud-based, of course, but these are some of the solutions that, and I know a lot of the tribal customers on this call will definitely are using some, if not all of these, but these are the solutions that we're talking about when we address each of the 5 categories. When you talk about identities, right? You're looking at our Azure Active Directory. You're looking at Azure Advanced Threat Protection, which is on-prem, dealing with the domain controllers. And you're also dealing with cloud, what happens from a CASB perspective. When you're looking at endpoints, right, you're starting with the OS, with your Win 10. We then have our Microsoft Intune, which is our endpoint management component. And then you also have our Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, which is our EDR and AV solution, right? From a user data perspective, right, we come at user data from a vast array of solution points there, right? We take a look at user data from the endpoint with our Defender Advanced Threat Protection product. We take a look at user data from a CASB perspective with our Microsoft Cloud App Security. We look at it with what's happening in email, what's happening from an advanced threat protection perspective, and of course, our Office 365 threat intelligence. So we come at email from different, or user data from different angles from our solution set to ensure that your user data is covered from a threat protection perspective. In the cloud, we of course use our Microsoft Cloud App Security from a CASB perspective, but also our cloud apps and protecting those apps are also governed under our Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection and Exchange. And we'll show you how that works in a few minutes here. And then finally, we have, from an infrastructure perspective, VMs, network across clouds and on-prem locations. We have our Azure Security Center and our various endpoint pieces there with Windows Server for Linux and SQL Server. And so at the end of the day, this is our view. And again, I challenge each person who is attending this this session today. You have to do this, right? You have to protect against attack vectors, right? That's shutting things down. That's maybe a bit of castle and moat, but you have to look at each attack vector and protect those attack vectors. But you also have to, in the middle here, you have to assume breach, right? So when breach does occur, how do you handle breach? How do you deal with a breach happening in your environment and deal with that quickly, right? Mitigation from a rapid response perspective. And then finally, how do you respond and remediate? Breach happens, identified it. What's the best way to respond and remediate those risks? Be it playbooks, be it empowering your resources to make intelligent decisions. That is what we believe is the crux of our Microsoft Threat Protection, right? And then you layer that with user education and training. That's what we have as part of our Microsoft Threat Protection. And I'll show you that in a few seconds here. And so most of you that I've talked to and others, I know you probably deal with a bit of this, right? You have most times security is multiple disjointed and complex products. Best of breed here, or we've always had that there, or you name it, right? So now you have these disjointed complex products. Now you have to find a way for them to maybe communicate to each other and maybe respond if something happens in one lane versus the other, right? That's challenging, right? And what we intend to get you to, and what the recommendation is more of a model of this, right? Back to this solution point here, where we can protect each of these swim lanes, identity, right? Endpoints, user data, cloud apps, infrastructure, and have them completely integrated and sharing telemetry, right? And be able to all participate in some level of response and risk mitigation. That's the optimum way of doing security in a minimum complexity manner. And so now I get to a little bit of the products here with what we're doing with Microsoft 365 and our Microsoft Threat Protection platform. So from an email perspective, we have Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, right? And I'll go into these a little bit more as we flow through here. We have endpoints, we have our Defender apps. Of course, we have our Microsoft Cloud App Security. And then from an identity perspective, we have our Azure Advanced Threat Protection and our Azure Active Directory, right? And they're meant to do these things in harmony. And I love showing this slide, right? I called out 4 separate focal areas. I left out infrastructure, but there are 4 separate focal areas in Microsoft 365, right? But they work together to achieve what you see here on the right, right? That is the key. That's that integration, right? We want to stop attacks before they occur by reducing your attack surface, right? If it's a highly sensitive document or email, then you have to be on a corporate issued device, reducing the surface. And maybe you have to be in a certain group, or you must MFA, reducing the attack surface, right? That's one of the main missions that all 4 of these participate in. Detect and automate across domains, integrating data for rapid response, right? And I'll show you here when we pull up our dashboard how we share this telemetry, orchestrate what's happening, and say, you know what? We had 3 alerts over here that happened in the cloud. There's 5 alerts that happen in email. They belong together. That's one attack. That's one incident, right? That's that integration and correlation. Hunt across domains, right? Now we get into a proactive mode, right? This is what Microsoft 365 brings you to when you talk about threat protection, right? Going from responding to this and responding to this telemetry that popped up or this alert, allowing you to integrate playbooks and automation, and then freeing up your resources to do more advanced hunting. That's where the real power comes in. And then finally, viewing alerts across the environments using a single dashboard. And I'll show you that dashboard in a second here. Bigger picture, right? Everything that I'm going to show you today is being generated here in the Microsoft Threat Protection realm around email and docs, endpoints, identity, and apps. But there is a bigger story, right? And we even have you covered there, right? What happens in the VM, container, IaaS, PaaS, IoT world, right? We have you covered there with Azure Security Center. By the way, which participates and shares telemetry with the other Microsoft Threat Protection products that we mentioned here. But at a higher level, right, if you have a multi-cloud environment, if you have third parties and partners, and you want to bring that orchestration and correlation up to that level, right, ingesting what's happening in Microsoft Threat Protection, ingesting and bringing in the telemetry on what's happening on the Azure Security Center side of the house, and then correlating and orchestrating all of that at a higher level from a SIEM perspective, we have the Azure Sentinel. So I want to march through here a quick kill chain, typical kill chain that happens throughout most exploits, right? One of the things that I'm on the hook in my role as a technical specialist for security and compliance is we're being mandated to become certified ethical hackers, right? And initially, I had an eyebrow raised and I said, well, why? You know, why do we go there? But it makes sense, right? It really, going through that coursework and training and everything that's involved there really has brought me to understand how the bad actors are coming at our organizations, and really give me a deeper insight into how we, Microsoft, is addressing that by this integrated and shared approach, what we're doing in Microsoft Threat Protection. And this is one of the kill chains. And to be honest, a lot of the attacks follow this kill chain, right? And so typically what happens is our weakest link in our organizations, right? They either browse to a website or they get some email that's a phishing email, and inevitably the weak link, us humans, will click and or open an attachment or go to that bad website, right? It happens, right? And at that point, the exploitation and installation, that command and control scenario kicks off there on the endpoint. Once that bad actor has access to that endpoint, now the account compromise process starts, right? They can do it in an array of manners actually on a device, or they can use some brute force measure with using stolen credentials that they may found from other resources. Once the account is compromised, right, then the bad actor starts to get into your domain realm, right? So now they want to do some lateral movement to ultimately get to some higher level or privilege level accounts, or they want to do some recon and grab some config data and see what's happening in your environment, right? Then ultimately there's a domain compromise issue that attempts to happen. And finally, the bad actor's ultimate goal is to get to that crown jewel, right? And that's to get to the sensitive data and do some exfiltration there. That is pretty typical of most attacks, no matter how they're born or where they're injected in the process. This is typically how it goes. But the beauty is, right, with an integrated approach, right, Microsoft Threat Protection using Microsoft 365, in this case, I'll say E5, right, we handle that in each vector and we correlate what happens. Let me show you. So from the email perspective, right, this first entry point in this particular chain, we take a look at what's happening there from clicks and attachments and URLs, and we layer on Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. For us, that takes care of your malware, adds the safe links and safe attachments. We have sandboxing and detonation out in the cloud. We protect you there. Let's say a malicious piece still, and it will, right? There's no one magic spectrum here. It has to be a coordinated approach. If it ends up on the endpoint, right, we have an EDR, EPP, AV solution in our Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection product, right? Cloud-based, it can scale with you, it shares telemetry, right? And it also does behavior analysis for you. It looks for what's happening from a DLL EXE perspective. It understands, like none other, right, how things should integrate and operate with Win 10, right? This process is behaving badly. This user is doing something on this endpoint that shouldn't happen. We quarantine, we mitigate, we march forward. From a brute force or stolen credentials perspective on the dark web, we have our Azure Active Directory identity protection, right? Where we literally scour the dark web, take a look at what's happening, compare that to what's happening from your user base perspective, and we issue out user risk score, right? Brian is seen here, and he's part of X attack. You may want to deem Brian a higher risk user, right? So that you then, the organization, can make some decisions based off of that. Again, reducing the risk landscape, sharing telemetry, acting in a proactive mode. As we march forward in this attack chain, right, we take care of things from a domain perspective, looking at what's happening on your domain controllers, normalizing your behavior, your user behavior. Brian always authenticates from 10 a.m., or excuse me, that's rather late today, but 8 a.m. Eastern to 10 a.m. Eastern from Washington, D.C. area. But today, he's authenticating at 2 a.m., from New Zealand. That's a behavior anomaly, right? That should be a flag. That should be noted here, right? Brian is trying to escalate his privileges to some account that he rarely uses or doesn't have access to. Should be a trigger. That's where Azure Advanced Threat Protection comes into play. It further takes care of your identities by looking at those behavior, by normalizing data and giving you some insights into what's happening there to further reduce your risk landscape. And then finally, we have you covered in the cloud realm from a SaaS perspective and even on-prem application perspective. We use our Microsoft Cloud App Security product there in a CASB mode, using the same organizational policies here. We can look for things, right? Brian normally interacts with excess application and uploads and downloads about 4 megabytes per day. However, today, he tried to upload 3 sensitive documents to a non-approved SaaS location, and to the approved SaaS location, he's now downloading or uploading about 10 gigs worth of data. Should be a flag, should be able to be blocked, and that's what we do there with Microsoft Cloud App Security. It's an integrated approach that you're looking at here. They're all connected, and we're working together, sharing telemetry and automating the response to threats. That is Microsoft Threat Protection, and this is what we strive to get our organizations to who we're looking to help and assist in their journey. Now, I'll give you one example here, and I'm going to march through each one of these and give you a deeper, quick insight into each one of these solution areas, right? But I want to give you one example that we see quite a bit, right? Think about this scenario. Malware getting onto a work PC, corporate issued PC, through a personal email box. I'll tell a quick story here, and I know we're marching through from a time perspective. I recently had a family reunion, right? And most of my family are literally from Surrey County, Virginia. And for those who aren't familiar, we're literally right across the river from Jamestown. And we had a reunion and we did some storytelling. And I have a large family, and a lot of my aunts and extended family are well over 70, 80 years old. And we had about 320 people on a Teams call. Most of them were elderly, some using work machines, others not. It further told me that everybody is starting to utilize technology. We're all working in a remote capacity. And so this scenario really hit home for me that there is a direct possibility that someone could be using a work machine to do personal things that could infect the organization, right? And so this scenario made sense to me. So let's march through it. So phishing email comes into a personal email, Yahoo, or you name it, right? The mail comes in, of course, the weak link, the human. We open that attachment, even we know we shouldn't have, and all the training we've gotten says don't, we do it. We're human, right? The malware gets onto the PC. So, but because you as an organization in this scenario are running Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, we recognize that this attachment that's on our endpoint is behaving badly, right? It really didn't get on the machine, right? Because of Defender, we put binaries or attachments in three categories. Either we know that it's good, or we know that it's bad, in which case we reject it, or it's unknown. This one potentially was an unknown, day zero. So what did we do? Because Defender's a cloud, EDR, and AV, we took this binary, we put it up in the cloud, we did some detonation from a sandboxing perspective. We found out that this file behaves in a poor manner, and we said, nope, we won't allow you to open here. We're gonna quarantine you and mitigate that, right? Defender did its job. But here's where the automation and integration comes into play. But now, Defender reports back, as I mentioned before, to the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph, where all of our shared security signals lived, right? And so we publish it there. Because the organization is also running Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection on the front end, it says, great, I got that intel. Thank you very much, Defender. What we'll do now in an automated fashion is any future emails or attachments that comes in that matches this binary, we're going to block it. Although we weren't the recipient of this attack, it came in and through our EDR, or through our endpoint, we reap the benefits of integration, and we're going to block future attacks from happening using that attachment. Also, in an automated playbook manner, something set up by the organization, Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection will also scan all other company inboxes, could be 10,000, could be 100,000, right? And we will remove any attachments that's waiting in an inbox that has yet to be clicked on yet, right? Automation, integration. Finally, Defender, because you have it on all the other endpoints, the 10,000 endpoints in your organization, it will also look, because of the shared information to the security graph, it will also look on the endpoints. And if it sees that attachment on any other of the endpoints, it's going to remediate those infected endpoints right away. If this happens in milliseconds, this happened in this particular scenario with zero user intervention, and this is what we call integration and automation from a Microsoft threat protection perspective. Pretty cool. So finally, we use as part of this, and you'll see this in some of the talks as I continue to march through here, we use conditional access to make decisions. Some decisions can be static. We know that maybe to get to certain applications, we want you to be on a corporate issued device, right? Data sovereignty or whatever the case is, we want you to stay here. Those are static. We know those conditions, and we can put them in here, allow, block, enforce MFA, and do what we want to do to our resources. But we also can do things from a threat mitigation perspective I talked about before. We can use our identity management or our risk mitigation from identity perspective and assign risk to users. So if your score as a user is above a 3 or above a 4 on a scale of 1 to 5, do something. If it's less than 2, do something, right? So now dynamically you can shift as an organization and adjust to various conditions using the conditional access piece here. I always give the example, Brian, in the morning at 8 a.m., he was great. He came in, his device was clean, he went to check his email, everything was great at 8 a.m. At 8:50, Brian had, at that point, had downloaded something to his device, which made his device not compliant, and Brian is using some browser that's not compliant, and Brian's credentials are out on the dark web as part of some other risk somewhere. That point, now Brian's session risk and user risk score goes up because your policies are already set. If his risk score goes up above a 3 or session risk above a 4, block and require Brian to change his password, you as an organization can react in a dynamic manner and mitigate that risk before it becomes a problem. So let's take a look here at the first leg of this kill chain, which is Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. So I'll just walk through quickly for those who aren't familiar on what Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection does for you in that particular kill chain. So we do certain things protecting the mail at the mail flow realm. I talked about the phishing. We use machine learning models to come up with which URLs, which emails are bad. We look at reputation, and we do the detonation out in the cloud. We also have a AV component, right, to our files that come in through our mail system, right, which does the same thing from an AV scan, reputation to sandboxing. We protect at time of click. As we all know, there's certain attacks that come in where the URL may change or something different behavior-wise will happen at the time of click. Looks clean here, but when I clicked on it, something totally different happened. We have you there, and that's what we do with our advanced threat protection safe links with a redetonation of the URL. Sure, URL, you want to change and be sneaky, right? That's fine. We will redetonate you now that you've changed to ensure that you're okay and you're not at harm to the organization. We also do things post-delivery using our ZAP, right? That's part of the Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection Suite, right? So if we do find, and I showed you that scenario a few minutes ago about the email coming in from a personal inbox, and then Office 365, the ATP goes out and removes that already delivered bad attachment from any inbox. Well, that was using ZAP. Right? That's a post-delivery protection component of Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. And then finally, we do post-breach from an Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection perspective, right? So we can take a look and mitigate user accounts that have been compromised. We can do incident, auto incident trigger, incident response triggering, remediation. We can also do some proactive measures here, email campaigns and threat hunting, right? So we offer that all as part of this Office 365 Advanced Protection Suite. Here, so protecting your data, I won't spend a ton of time here because I really want to show you the console and walk you through how this is all integrated from a dashboarding perspective. But the key takeaway here is we protect your data along the way throughout what's happening in SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, right, Exchange. We take a look at your threats across those mediums as well. So if a file comes into Teams or a URL comes in, we do the same protection that we just talked through with sandboxing and AV engines and first and third party reputation checking against any URLs or data that's being generated there. So your data is protected. Here. We add automation. This is the key here to this particular slide. From an alerts perspective, we get alerts. Again, this is from that Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph. We can do some analyzation of your URL detonation results. We take a look at that from an investigation perspective. And assessing impact. We have some automated investigation workflows that you as an organization can take advantage of. Automated playbooks, integration with Azure Active Directory and our CASB solution, right? We can do some integrated contain actions through our Threat Explorer. So we literally have a means to walk through and explore a type of dashboarding to walk through and allow your resources, and we'll point them in the right direction on what to look for, how to maybe contain it, and some other actions they can do from things that they find in the email or other realm. And then finally, we can respond to threats using that same Explorer and even automated response actions. Let's move now to our Defender product as part of this kill chain. I want to describe that really quick. So this story, I think, is known to everybody on the call here, right? This is nothing new, and this is probably one of your biggest pain point areas, right? Outside of the identities, how do we take care of those endpoints, right? Dealing with day zero, dealing with fileless attacks and phishing and you name it, right? And how do we balance all of that with performance and security teams, your skilling and your cost, right? How do we walk that line as well as achieve everything that we want to achieve here? One of the biggest pain points I see here with the bolted on approach with bringing in some third party, right, is how do we avoid that performance hit? If I had a dime for every time I heard this, my AV or my EDR is killing my boot up. It takes 15 to 20 minutes, whatever the time frame is, to boot up my machine, and even then, it still doesn't seem right, right? That's what you're dealing with in this realm. What we have to offer, of course, is our built-in approach to EDR and AV, which is our Defender. And these are the pieces that a Defender takes care of for you, right? From reducing the surface attack to the next generation AV to EDR, right? Detecting, investigating, and responding to advanced attacks, the auto investigation and remediation of what's happening on those endpoints, track and improve your organization's security posture, right? I'll show you this, right? We don't leave you on an island when it comes to Microsoft threat protection. We literally give you assessment tools to see what your posture is like. How can I gain a better security posture? What does my tangible evidence look like that I'm getting better or I'm sliding backwards? We give you that, right? And then finally, we want to free your skills, your resources up to do more advanced hunting. Get out of the day-to-day responding to known things, add playbooks, add automation, and redirect your skilling or your resources to do more advanced hunting. And then on top of all of that, right, we extend for your EDR and AV perspective, management and APIs to allow you to really automate and programmatically address a lot of this. So this is the breakdown of Defender, and then we'll move to the next one, right? Defender does things at the security center layer, right? Alerting, investigation, responses. We have centralized management, that's a component of it, right? Because Defender is as a unified platform that does many things, as you're seeing here, right? Centralized management, those analytics that I talked about, the reporting, how you're configured, how you're misconfigured. In the cloud itself, these are the things that we do, and we scale very well here, right? From URL, IP reputation, file reputation, the sandboxing that I mentioned, to anomalies and behavior detections, right? That's scaled at cloud level, so you don't have to worry about that as an organization. And then the threat intelligence piece. On the actual endpoint, right, we do the attack surface reduction. And hopefully a theme is coming together here, right, that you're hearing is it's not one thing. It's not the castle and moat. It has to be a collective approach to security across the realm, reducing the attack surface. This is how we do that. How do we handle antivirus and machine learning and different emulators and such? We do the next generation protection there. EDR, right? Behavior monitoring, right? We baseline your behavior on devices, and when things get out of whack, it signals something, right? Kick off automated investigations and remediation. And of course, we have third-party platform partners that we deal with as well. In the identity protection realm, right? And I'll kind of skip through this a little bit. This is how we analyze your risk from an identity perspective, identity protection perspective, right? We look at sign-ins that are considered risky, right? Anonymous IPs, unfamiliar sign-in properties, you name it. You know, activity done in an application after sign-ins is suspicious, right? That's beautiful, right? Typically in the past, once you've provided the proper credentials And we as an organization, right, organizations have typically washed our hands and say, okay, we've done our job. We've done things on the front end. We think Brian's good. Go ahead, Brian, have at it. No, our work is not done there. We take a look at what's happening even after you sign in. And again, we look at the credentials that are known to be compromised, that are leaked out on other data breaches. We take all that into consideration. We look at all these things here, and I won't get too deep on this call, but we track detections not linked to a sign-in, offline detections, real-time detections on what's happening. We cobble all that together and give you a risk score, right? Once we give you that risk score, you as an organization can say, and the scoring system is 1 through 5, you as an organization can say, okay, if my score is less than 2, do X, 2 to 4, do Y. If it's 5, ever 5, do Z, right? That gives you that power. And this is what we're constantly checking every user, every session for. I will skip through that. And then we get to the domain part of the story, the Azure Advanced Threat Protection. What's happening by way of accounts being compromised on your domain, your privileged accounts, lateral movement? How do we monitor that? Of course, that's Azure Advanced Threat Protection. And we kind of capture that in 4 realms there. We prevent, your things from happening by way of improving security posture, automating and updates and configuration. We detect more visibility from what's happening on your domain controllers. We get rid of the noise, right? And so there's a lot of chatter for those who are familiar with the domain controls. A lot of chatter happens. This person logged in, this person logged out, this machine. We get rid of all that noise and allow your resource to really focus on the important things. Investigate and uncover complex threats. And of course, we respond to what's happening in your domain in a quick manner. These are some of the areas that we take a look at from a domain perspective. We look at the network traffic, we analyze that, security events that's happening and Active Directory data. We inspect all of those and make sense of it for you, right? This is all being done by way of sensors that are on your domain controllers. We ship that out to the cloud for processing, and we give you real data to act on. We look at user behavior and analytics, right? We do profiling of your users. We baseline their activity. We know that Brian only interacts with these 4 devices, 2 servers and 2 machines that he typically uses. If all of a sudden next Thursday, Brian is reaching out to 40 other machines, that should trigger something, user behavior analytics. And then finally, we do cloud-based real-time detections, and that's where we do the processing there. These are some of the things that we look for from an Azure Advanced Threat Protection perspective across these 4 models: discovery, credential access, lateral movement, and persistence, right? And these should look familiar, right? But think about how you get to this without being able to utilize some sort of machine learning and cloud entity to process this for you, right? Honey token accounts for suspicious activity, looking for data exfiltration, pass the ticket, pass the hash, right? How do you decipher all that log data and chatter and make sense of it? We do that for you with Azure Advanced Threat Protection. And finally, I'll get to show you Cloud App Security, and I want to show you the console here, and it looks like we're right on time. We do Cloud App Security to take care of what's happening in the cloud, right? And we view the cloud as segment, our CASB, or any CASB for that matter, it really falls into 3 categories, right? How do you deal with unsanctioned apps, right? Discovering them, taking care of shadow IT. How do you govern those apps? The second and third is sanctioned apps. There's apps that we have approved as an organization, right? We want to classify, label, and protect sensitive data that's flowing through those applications and make sure data is under our umbrella from a data sovereignty perspective, right? We want to control and monitor those sessions real time, right? I talked about looking at how much data is being transmitted on it, normalizing that and calling out where that variance changes. And then the third one, which is what we're focusing on today, is mitigating our threats, right? So again, any files that come across, any data, any emails, we're doing the same inspection that's happening here and trying to help you as an organization detect insider threat, identifying and mitigating any malware activities that happens in your organization from a CASB or cloud perspective, right? So this is what we do there. I will kind of move forward here. Our Microsoft Cloud App Security is super powerful, right? I talked to quite a bit of the tribal entities. We focus on a lot of them focusing on data loss prevention and some of the other beautiful components that our CASB participates in an integrated fashion. But we also help with the security posture management and taking care of security incidents and event management by shipping that out if you need to. Security workflow automation, right? The same power, right? And this is putting it in the pond. You can't be a malicious behaving person in the cloud realm and come back to your mobile device and the organization treats you the same. You're going to put you in the pond. If you make a ripple, everybody's going to see it. So just to finish out this point, right? Organizations deal with security typically in a multiple disjointed, complex product scenario. What we're advocating is let's organize that, right? Let's operate in an integrated, automated fashion. Whatever solution you end up with, we have to have it sharing telemetry. We have to put them in the pond so that they all react and respond to one another, share security data, and work in an orchestrated manner to mitigate risk and threats. John, I'll pause real quick. Are there any pressing questions as I transition to my dashboard to show a quick demo?
No, not at this time, Brian.
Thank you, John. So what I've done now, right, and I'll spend the last 10 minutes or so here walking through our consoles, is I've transitioned to our security.microsoft.com dashboard, which is that single pane view. That's what we're getting you to, right? How do we as an organization take a look at everything you just showed me, Brian, is great, but how do I see it in that single pane? Well, here you are, right? Right at my fingertips, and this dashboard is of course configurable. I can add cards or remove cards, right? But it's showing me everything that I've lit up in my environment. I can see at a glance, I got 31% of my devices in a non-compliant state. Oh, wow, let's take a look. I can dive in deeper. I got 9 users that are at risk in my environment, right? I have some device threat analytics that's going on. There's some top of the mind threats that are happening out there. And here's what the effect is in my organization. 1 out of 5 entities are affected in my organizations by this particular threat. I can take it users with threat detections, right? These are the users or the groups. This is this global reader person, right, has 17 alerts, generated 17 alerts. The security person has generated 27. I can look right at, there's 9 devices that are at risk in my organization, right? I didn't have to click anywhere. I didn't have to run any command scripts. I didn't have to traverse through 4 different screens, all right here, one pane, and I can see the status or the heartbeat of my organization from a security perspective. On the right here, and I hope most of you, and this is, I think, number 4 of our sessions that we're going to deliver, but most of you should be using Secure Score on a daily basis, right? And so this shows you Secure Score, right? What your score is as an organization, right? We, Microsoft, based on all the telemetry that we gather, we recommend certain things based off of what you've configured and what you own, right? You should be doing X. If you're not, we won't give you those points. If you are, you get the credit for it. But we want to partner with you as an organization to ensure that you're doing the right things to keep you or minimize your threat landscape, right? And so that's what this is. And so out of 100, my score is 43.88. Now, will I ever get to 100%? Probably not, right? but I can see what areas I have to focus on. You can assign those, and we'll talk about that in the fourth session on how we operationalize Secure Score and how we get take the recommendations that we give you and how you as an organization can handle that. Device with active malware, I can see that right away. There's one device that's affected there. And then we even give you an intelligence feed. Allow your resources to move more into that advanced proactive mode. What's happening around me? Here are some things that we're seeing. We give you that Twitter feed to take a look at and educate your admins so that you're ahead of the curve versus being in reactive mode. But that's great. Single pane. I'll show you some of the breakdowns in a second, but I'm really excited to show you this part. This is the incident correlation piece, right? This is what I talked about before, where all of those threat protection components that we just talked about are sharing telemetry, and we, Microsoft 365, right? We cobble that together and make sense of it for you. So I'll take this one. This particular incident is a collection of alerts. From different entities, i.e. Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. Domain controllers have reported some of these 59 alerts. Our Microsoft threat protection as a whole, the threat intelligence component has reported up. Our CASB, Microsoft Cloud App Security, has reported up. Our EDR has reported up some information, and our antivirus has contributed to this incident. So we got data all over the place. Credit card was one of the tags that got flagged. We got information from all over the place. What we did in an intelligent, cloud-based manner is we analyzed all of those 59 alerts, and we said, you know what? Out of the thousands and thousands of alerts that we get every day, these 59 belong together. You, IT professional, should focus on these 59 as one coordinated incident. That's beautiful. But as we all are in this industry, I still remain skeptical. Why did you tell me that these 59 belong together? Let's take a look. So when I go inside of this particular incident, now here's again when more of the magic starts to happen. Mind you, I haven't executed one command line script yet. I haven't opened up one log file yet. This is all integrated. This is all orchestrated from our Microsoft Threat Protection platform, right? So it tells me from my MITRE attack perspective that here's the timeline of events that happened, right? Email message came in containing active malware that was removed. We resolved the Defender antivirus protection was turned off on this particular PC. A post-delivery detection was happened there. There was 18 impacted devices, 11 users, 3 mailboxes, and here they are. There were 23 entities found by way of evidence. That's processes and files that were attacked. It tells you who owns it, right? I can go here and click on the 59 alerts and take a look at each alert and where it came from, right? What happened? Why did this alert become part of this incident? Activity from a Tor browser or Tor IP address. Email reported to a user as malware or phishing. Reported by a user as malware or phishing, right? 2 suspected PowerShell commands run. All your evidence right here at a click. And take a look at the 18 devices that were involved, right? And take a look at what's happening those first activity, last activity, how many other related alerts are related to those devices, all at my fingertips. I can take a look at the 11 users that were involved in this particular incident and why, right? Click on each user. I can see their title, right? Oh my gosh, this is a SecOps engineer. Why is Matt, my SecOps engineer, part of this incident? We can find out and go take a look. I can search by department or, whatever the information is, we cobbled that together for you as part of this incident. I can look here, more information about my mailboxes. Again, this is all coming from those different systems that we laid out before. But in this view, as part of this incident, we have orchestrated and cobbled that together for you, the end user. We can look at the investigations that kicked off. These are the auto investigations. Mimikatz detected, a hack tool, a remote code attempt, what we did with it, who mitigated the service source that mitigated it, Azure ATP or a Defender, and what we did with it, right? And then finally, we give you the evidence, right? If by now you still aren't convinced that this is an issue, here's the actual emails, here's the actual files and what happened, the actual processes, right? And so that's how we kind of bridge it and collect it all together. So finally, I'll walk you through real quick the dashboards. I know I got about 2 minutes here. So I'll just walk you through each of the dashboards just to give you insight on what they look like. And there's way more to all of this. So this is the Cloud App Security dashboard, what's happening in my SaaS space. And so right away, look at this. It's telling me I got 18 users that probably need investigation. I can click on each one and find out why. There's 79 open alerts, right? 66 files infected that's flowing through my SaaS applications, 2 app connector issues, so on and so forth. I can take a look at my Defender specific dashboard, which is for my EDR and my AV. Again, showing me active alerts, attacks that's happening, devices at risk, users at risk, giving me all this data at my fingertips. And again, I can go through and take a look and respond. There's a notion of incidents here in my endpoint EDR system, so I can go through that as well. This is within my Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection realm. So I can look at the dashboarding there and see what's happening by way of investigations and actions and what's happening there, how many phishing attacks and safe attachments were blocked, right? Gives me an entire landscape of what's happening in my environment at my fingertips. And again, within this console, I can then go through and remediate and really do some heavy action as part of this. The last 2 here, this is my Azure Advanced Threat Protection. So looking at my domain controllers, I can see at a glance what's happening across my domain. This is on-prem, right? Suspected skeleton key attack, right? Suspected golden ticket usage. That's an anomaly that was detected. So right at a glance, I can see what's happening across my domain by way of the domain controller sensors that we have out there. And then finally, my identity protection overview. I can take a look at what's happening from an identity perspective, who's at risk, risky users detected, what's it look like over time, right? I got 7 high-risk users detected in my environment, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at those users, right? Unprotected, risky sign-ins, right? So at a glance, I can see from an identity perspective, who's at risk, who's putting my organization at risk, and go out and do something. And so that, in essence, is the presentation. I'll finish with this this one slide here. We want you to behave, or we want each organization to be in a situation where you're doing this. Even without Microsoft, this has to be the end goal, right? You have to protect identities. You have to protect endpoints, user data. You have to play in the cloud realm and in the infrastructure realm. They should all talk to each other. They should all integrate with each other. You should have a level of machine learning and AI connected to all of these. They should share telemetry, and you should be able to apply automation across all of these. We believe we have a system that can help you with that by way of Microsoft Threat Protection and our 365 platform. So we welcome, I challenge each and every one of you to please reach out. I can go into each one of these realms in super deep level. Let's talk about what you own today and maybe get the most out of what you use today. And please, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out.